You ever notice how a man changes when he crosses 40? There's this shift you can almost feel before you see it. Like the noise in his mind finally fades, and he's left with a kind of silence that isn't empty at all. It's clarity. He stops running from himself. He stops chasing things he thought he needed to prove. It's like he finally turns around and looks his own life in the eye. The wins, the losses, the parts of himself he gave away without meaning to. And in that stillness, something honest rises to the surface. He starts realizing how much of his life was lived on momentum, how many choices he made because he thought he should, not because he truly wanted to. And suddenly, the things he once feared being alone, being misunderstood, being outside the script, don't scare him anymore. They almost feel like freedom. And man, I've been seeing this in more guys lately. Men who spent years twisting themselves into knots trying to be enough for everyone else. Now choosing something people rarely expect from a man they're choosing themselves, not in a loud, rebellious way, in a quiet, grounded way that comes from surviving enough storms to know what peace is worth. They're not walking away because they're broken. They're walking away because they're awake. Because for the first time, they're not trying to fix themselves to fit into someone else's world. They're building a world where they finally fit. And when you really listen to them, when you hear the truth behind the calm in their voice, you understand something simple. Bachelor life isn't the fallback. It's the life that finally feels honest. Not if my options run out, not if love doesn't work, but this space, this freedom, this quiet, this is the life they choose. Not someday, not as plan B, but for good. Number 1, the silent shift. There's this quiet transformation happening right under society's nose. You see it in the numbers, but you feel it in men's faces. Back in the day, not being married by 40 made you an outsider, a tragedy, a man who somehow failed at the script. Now, 28% of men at 40 have never married, and not because they couldn't. It's because they finally realized they don't have to. Something in the world changed, but something in men changed even more. They're not chasing approval. They're not chasing validation. They're not chasing some ideal that never cared about them in the first place. They're choosing peace. And once a man tastes real peace, it's damn hard to convince him to trade it back. And here's the part most people overlook. Brother, this shift didn't come from resentment or defeat. It came from clarity. Men hit 40 and the fog lifts. The pressure to meet expectations, to follow the script, to keep proving their worth. It finally loses its grip. What remains is a man who can look at his life without flinching, a man who finally sees what actually matters to him. He's not angry that the old path didn't fit. He's relieved he doesn't have to force himself into it anymore. Because when you've spent years twisting yourself into shapes that never felt natural, standing up straight feels like freedom. Realizing your value doesn't depend on being chosen, but on choosing yourself that hits different. That's the shift you notice when you talk to men over 40. It's in the way they breathe slower, speak calmer, move with intention. They're not scrambling. They're not thirsty for validation. They're not looking for someone to complete them. They're done proving. They're done chasing. They're done performing. They're building a life that feels clean, grounded, and true. And once a man reconnects with that part of himself, the quiet part, the steady part, he guards it like something sacred. He won't hand it over cheaply again. That's why so many men over 40 aren't sprinting toward marriage like their fathers did. Not because they don't believe in love, but because they finally believe in themselves. And once a man finds peace, real peace, good luck, convincing him to exchange it for a life that doesn't reflect who he is anymore. Number 2, doing the math. And once that quiet shift happens, once a man stops chasing and starts seeing clearly, something else kicks in the math. Not the romantic kind, the real kind. The kind life forces you to learn after you've watched enough men bleed from battles they never thought they'd fight. There's a point in a man's life where romance stops being fireworks and becomes numbers. Not because he's cold, because he's lived long enough to understand what those fireworks can cost. He's seen brothers lose everything in a divorce. He's watched good men, solid men, step into a courtroom thinking the truth would protect them, only to walk out hollowed. House gone. Savings gone. Retirement wiped clean like it never existed. And brother, when you see that up close, it leaves a mark. He's seen men in their 50s living in apartments they never imagined, staring at paperwork that doesn't care how many years they poured into a marriage. He's seen a lifetime of work, a home, a family, stability turn into liabilities the moment things fall apart. And he sits with all that, quietly, honestly, and he asks himself the question younger men brush off. Is love worth rolling the dice when the house always wins? At 20, that question sounds cynical. At 40, it sounds responsible. Because divorce isn't just emotional ruin, it's financial demolition. Not theoretically, not in some statistic on a screen. Men have watched it unfold in slow motion in the lives of their friends, their brothers, sometimes even their others. It's not a story someone told them. It's a reality they had front row seats to. So, something shifts. Marriage stops looking like security and starts looking like risk. A risk that grows sharper with every birthday. A risk that feels less like hope and more like a gamble where the odds weren't designed for him. And this isn't bitterness. This is clarity. This is a man looking at life with the same honesty he learned in the first shift and saying, I choose not to bet everything I've built on something that can take it all away. Because once a man has been around long enough to see the math behind the romance, he stops pretending the numbers don't matter. He stops ignoring the patterns. He stops believing he's the exception. He's not running from love. He's protecting the life he fought too hard to build. Number 3, digital dating burnout. And once a man starts doing the math, once he sees the risk, the patterns, the wreckage, he doesn't just rethink marriage. He rethinks the road that leads to it. Because if marriage is the gamble at the end, dating is the battlefield leading up to it. And man, modern dating is something else entirely. It's not connection anymore. It's a marketplace. Fast, shallow, brutal. A place where men don't feel seen, just scanned, judged, filtered out before they even get the chance to show who they are. Women get match after match. Men get silence. Not because they're unworthy, but because the game was never designed with them in mind. And you can feel it in the way his energy drops a little each time he swipes. It's not even rejection at that point. It's erasure. Like he's becoming invisible in a world that claims to want connection, but rewards the surface instead of the soul. It drains him. Slowly, quietly. Swipe by swipe, he feels a little less hopeful, a little less curious, a little less himself. He watches himself turn into a profile instead of a person, one more face in a lineup, one more attempt to prove he's interesting enough, attractive enough, valuable enough. That kind of pressure changes a man, not loudly, but deeply. And after a while, something inside him just shuts off. Not out of weakness, out of self-respect. So he deletes the apps. He stops chasing down conversations that end in ghosting. He stops sprinting toward something that never sprints toward him. He steps out of the digital arena where men are expected to compete while pretending they're not exhausted. And in that silence, the silence after the noise, he feels something he hasn't felt in a long time. Peace. A peace that comes from not selling himself anymore. Not auditioning. Not trying to convince strangers that he's worth choosing. He chooses himself instead. He chooses real life over emotional roulette. He chooses to give his time, his energy, his presence to people who actually see him, not scan him. And that's the part people don't understand about men today. They're not avoiding dating because they can't hack it. They're stepping back because they finally see the cost. They finally feel the toll. They finally know the difference between being wanted and being used for attention. He's not disappearing from dating because he's afraid. He's disappearing because he's awake. Number 4, the impossible standard. And after everything he's seen, the risks, the math, the slow disappearance of men in modern dating, there's one more weight he carries, the one nobody really talks about out loud. It's the pressure of being a man today, the impossible standard, the shifting rules, the feeling that no matter what he does, he's doing it wrong. You ever feel that? That quiet frustration you swallow because you don't want to sound weak or dramatic. Men talk about it in those half laughs, the ones we use to hide the sting. Be strong, but not too strong. Be vulnerable, but only on cue. Only in the right tone. Only when it's convenient. Provide, but don't you dare be too focused on work. Lead, but don't look like you're leading. Share the load, but be ready to carry the heavy things no one else wants to touch. It's like being handed 2 maps and told to walk both at the same time. And the crazy part, if you choose one path, you're selfish. If you choose the other, you're insufficient. So you end up stuck in the middle, stretched thin, pulled in opposite directions until you don't even know who you're trying to please anymore. Men over 40 feel this even deeper. We grew up with one script, watched it get torn apart, and then got handed a brand new one with no guidance, no clarity, no direction, just expectations stacked on expectations. And at some point, usually around that age when the fog lifts, a man realizes he's exhausted. Not from loving, but from performing. He's tired of trying to be the perfect man in a world that doesn't seem to know what it wants from him. Tired of walking the tightrope. Tired of being judged for standing still and judged for moving forward. Tired of apologizing for who he is, who he isn't, who he's supposed to be. So he stops. He steps off the stage. He takes off the mask. He decides he'd rather be real than impressive, rather be himself than be approved of. No performance. No tightrope. No judgment. Just him unfiltered, unpressured, unmasked. And that's why bachelorhood hits different for a man over 40. It's not loneliness, not avoidance, not failure. It's relief. It's finally breathing without asking permission. It's freedom from the impossible standard he never agreed to carry in the first place. Sometimes bachelorhood isn't the absence of love. Sometimes it's the presence of peace. Number 5, old pressure gone. And once a man steps off that stage, once he stops performing, stops apologizing, stops bending himself into shapes that don't fit, something surprising happens. He realizes the world around him has changed too. All that old pressure we grew up with. The weight that told us a real man must be married by a certain age, must follow a certain script. It's gone. There was a time when a man without a wife was the punchline, a walking red flag, a cautionary tale your relatives whispered about at family gatherings. But now he's just a man living his life. No shame, no suspicion, no sideways looks. The stigma didn't just fade, it died quietly, and nobody even bothered to hold a funeral. And the crazy part, people don't judge the Bachelor at 45. More, they envy him. The freedom he moves with, the space he owns, the control he has over his time, his money, his peace, the way he wakes up without chaos, the way he answers to no one but himself. It hits different when you're older, when you've lived enough to know what those things are worth. So men start asking a question our fathers and grandfathers never got the chance to ask. Do I actually want marriage? Or did I just think I was supposed to? And brother, when that question finally gets answered honestly, without society whispering in his ear, without fear shaping his voice, a man often discovers a truth he never expected. That bachelorhood wasn't the failure. It wasn't the backup plan. It wasn't the something must be wrong with him outcome. It was freedom. A freedom he always had permission to choose. He just didn't know he could. And once a man realizes that once he feels how steady, how clean, how grounded life becomes without all those old expectations dragging behind him. He doesn't see bachelorhood as a missing piece anymore. He sees it for what it really is. A life he chose, a life he owns, a life that finally feels like his. Number 6. Freedom hits different. And the thing is, once a man breaks free from the old pressure, once he finally realizes he doesn't owe the world a version of himself that doesn't feel true, he steps into a kind of freedom he never really tasted before. Men don't say this out loud, but freedom, it rewires something in you. Not the wild, reckless freedom you had at 22. I'm talking about the mature kind, the grounded kind, the kind that comes from knowing that every inch of your life, every choice, every hour, every dollar, every breath is yours. Your money, yours. Your time, yours. Your home, your sanctuary, not a battleground. If you want to work late, you do. If you want to take a road trip at 6 a.m, you go. If you want silence, you have it. If you want noise, you invite it on your terms. There's a deep, masculine peace in answering only to yourself, a peace that isn't loud or showy. It's quiet, steady, like a calm river running through your chest. It's waking up and realizing your day belongs to you. It's coming home and knowing no one is waiting to unload their anger on you. It's making decisions without negotiation. It's living without walking on eggshells. And once a man gets used to that kind of peace, brother, good luck pulling him back into chaos. You couldn't drag him back with a rope, a promise, and 100 sweet words, because it's not that he hates commitment. It's that he's finally felt what life is like without constant emotional turbulence, without the expectations, without the pressure to be everything, fix everything, absorb everything. He's tasted a freedom that didn't make him empty, it made him whole. A freedom that didn't make him selfish, it made him sane. A freedom that didn't make him disconnected, it made him grounded. And once a man's soul learns what peace feels like, he'll protect it with everything he's got. Number 7. Love is peace and here's the part most people never understand about men, especially men over 40. We're not heartless. We feel deeply, we just feel quietly. But love today asks for a kind of emotional stamina that a lot of men don't have the fuel for anymore. Not because they're weak, because they're tired. Tired in a way that sits in the bones. Modern love isn't just connection, it's emotional management, conflict navigation, constant negotiation of moods, needs, expectations, things that shift daily, sometimes hourly, and after a long day, in a world that already demands so much from him. Sometimes, all a man wants is to come home and exhale, not walk through the door and prepare for another conversation, another correction, another, we need to talk waiting like a weight on the table. And this is where bachelorhood hits him, in a place he never expected. It gives him something he didn't even realize he'd been starving for peace. Not silence, not isolation. Peace. The kind that softens the edges of his mind, the kind that lets him sleep deeper, breathe slower, think clearer, the kind that makes his home feel like a refuge instead of a stage where he has to perform the right emotions at the right times to keep the air calm. He sits in his own space, no tension, no eggshells, no sudden emotional storms, and he realizes something honest. He's not lonely. He's calm. He's not avoiding love. He's avoiding the version of love that feels more like work than warmth, the version that drains instead of fills. And once a man gets used to this kind of peace, the steady kind, the clean kind, the kind that doesn't demand he constantly shape-shift to keep someone else comfortable, that peace becomes a luxury he'd rather protect than gamble away. He's not choosing solitude. He's choosing sanity. He's choosing stability. He's choosing a life where he can finally breathe without bracing himself, and that's not heartless. That's a man finally learning the difference between love and performance. Number 8. Life on his terms. And that's the thing. Brother, once a man finds that peace, once he steps away from the noise and the impossible expectations, he doesn't just sit in the quiet. He starts shaping a life that finally feels like it belongs to him. Because when a man over 40 chooses bachelorhood, he isn't opting out of life. He's building one. A stronger body, a sharper mind, a tighter circle of brothers who actually show up not out of obligation, but out of loyalty. His days stop being about what he should do and start becoming about what he wants to do. And for the first time in decades, he realizes how powerful that difference really is. He travels when he wants. No debates, no compromises, no permission slips. He invests how he wants, directing his money toward the future he envisions, not the one he's expected to maintain. He dresses how he wants, not to impress, but to express. He lives how he wants, in a space that reflects his truth instead of someone else's expectations. And people love to call that selfish. But it's not selfish, it's intentional. It's a man finally curating his life instead of inheriting one. He stops living on autopilot. He stops bending his identity to fit into a mold. He stops making choices that keep him small or busy or convenient. His life becomes an art form crafted with care, shaped by experience, grounded in freedom, not a negotiation, not a performance, not a compromise he keeps trying to convince himself he can live with. This is a man rebuilding from the inside out, a man who's not chasing a title or a role or a label, a man who finally understands that fulfillment doesn't come from meeting someone else's expectations. It comes from meeting your own. He's not avoiding responsibility. He's choosing responsibility for himself. And that's the kind of life a man stands tall in. Number 9. Quiet wisdom. And here's the part almost nobody understands the men choosing this life. They're not the broken ones. They're not the men who couldn't find someone. A lot of them are the successful ones, the educated ones, the financially solid ones, the men fully capable of being husbands, fathers, providers. They just don't want to be, not because they're afraid of commitment, but because they finally trust their own judgment. These aren't impulsive choices. These are calculated decisions made by men who've lived long enough to see the patterns, run the numbers, and weigh the cost. They've studied the modern landscape, the expectations, the legal risks, the emotional toll. They've watched the men around them lose everything in the wrong relationship. They've seen how modern dating drains more than it gives. They've felt the shift in society where marriage isn't a milestone anymore. It's an option. So they do what mature men do. They compare the cost to the reward. And for the first time, they realize the math doesn't lie. They're not choosing bachelorhood out of fear. They're choosing it out of clarity. A clarity that comes from paying attention. A clarity that comes from survival. A clarity that comes from finally valuing their own peace. And when a man reaches that point, when he sees the truth without the rose tint, without the pressure, without the guilt, the answer becomes simple. My peace is worth protecting, not out of selfishness, out of wisdom, because a man over 40 doesn't make choices to impress anyone. He makes choices to protect the life he built, the freedom he earned, and the calm he refuses to lose again. And that's not running away. That's intelligence, the quiet kind only life can teach. And that brings us to the truth. Most people never want to say out loud, the man over 40. Choosing bachelor life forever isn't lost. He's not broken. He's not running from love or hiding from responsibility. He's awake. For the first time in his life, he sees himself clearly, his worth, his boundaries, his peace, his energy, his limits. He understands what he can give and what it would cost him to give it away again. He's not stepping out of the game. He's stepping into his life. A life built with intention, shaped by experience, protected by wisdom. A life where he chooses his own rhythm, his own truth, his own direction. A life that answers to no one but the man he sees in the mirror. And if there's one thing every man on this path has ever whispered, sometimes proudly, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a relief he can barely put into words, it's this: he didn't walk away from love. He walked back toward himself. And brother, that's not a retreat. That's a return. If any part of this hit you even a little, let me know. Tell me what resonated. Tell me what part of your journey you're in. Because the more we talk about this, the more men realize they're not walking this path alone. And if you want more conversations like this, the late night, honest, man-to-man kind, stick around. There's more to say, and you deserve to hear it.